So before I set up the rest of the drivetrain, I'm just going to install some pedals so that will make it easier for me to rotate everything. Okay, then we'll do the left side. And just a reminder, the left or non-drive side is a reverse thread, so you turn it in counterclockwise. Okay, so that will help us turn these cranks a little more easily like this. Next we're going to install the chain. And a 1x crank set has a wide narrow tooth pattern, and that helps the chain stay on so the chain doesn't bounce off when you go over rough terrain. So the chain will actually only fit on the cranks a certain way. Okay, so if you look at the chain rings, I don't know if you can tell by looking, you see that like they're different sizes that correspond to the gaps between the chain links. So for example, this should go over like that. So we're going to loop this around the largest cog in the back. We're going to skip the derailleur for now and just touch them here. So ideally we will have, once these touch, we'll have 4 extra links. So 1, 2, 3, and then of course we have the quick link. So this is actually already sized to be exactly the right size. So I'm going to take my 2 quick links, and then we will go ahead and thread the chain around the smallest cog and through the derailleur. Now this derailleur has a little feature that helps me keep the cage in place, make it easier to do this. So we'll just hold that there, thread the chain through the cage, that, around the pulley wheels or the jockey wheels. Okay. Now if you have a chain tool, this would make your life a lot easier, because you can just like hook the ends into a couple of links, and that way you don't have to hold them together. And then we'll put our quick links in here like this, put them together. There we go. Okay, and I was able to snap them closed by hand. Now we'll release this. Now you can see the chain is kind of slack. I'm going to release the cage, and hopefully it's tight enough, which it is. So we'll go ahead and give this a turn. And even though I haven't indexed the derailleurs yet, we'll just try shifting through the gears to see, you know, how far it goes. Okay, I think that's as far as we're going for now. So it does work. We'll just have to continue indexing. But so far the chain seems to be installed correctly. So we'll shift back to the highest gear for now. Now to adjust the limit screws, I've shifted the shifters into the highest gear, and you can see that the chain still hasn't dropped to the smallest cog. So I need to adjust the high limit screw here. And when I turn that, the derailleur should move like this. So what I'm going to do is back the high limit screw out until the chain drops into the smallest cog like that. And now our high limit is set. To set the lower limit, we're going to move the derailleur by hand. So as I turn the cranks, I push a derailleur all the way through the gears as far as it will go. And if it doesn't reach the largest cog, you'll need to back out the lower limit screw. But in this case it already reaches it, so at this point I'm just going to check the alignment to make sure the chain lines up with that cog. To me that looks just slightly too far out. I'm going to just back that out a little bit as well so that we get a little more distance inwards. So you see that? We just moved it a little bit out so it's like lined up perfectly straight. I'm also just going to check the gap here, and we have plenty of space there. I can probably even back the B screw back out a little bit and get it a little closer to the cassette. So we'll back this out. So now we'll set this back to the small cog, like that. And now we'll actually index the cable. So I'm going to loosen this bolt here and pull this cable as tight as I can by hand. Clamp it down. Then we will try the shifters. So we'll shift once. So one click didn't do anything, you can see that. So our cable is probably still too slack. So what I'm going to do is just shift all the way up, and that way we'll seat the cable ferrules and then go back to the small cog. And that should have given us a lot of slack here, see that? So we're going to try to get that out. Again, I'm going to loosen this bolt, pull this cable as tight as I can get it, and then re-tighten. And we'll try one more time. So we'll shift. Okay, you can see it shifted. Again, it's shifting okay so far. Okay, now we're having a little bit of resistance there, so I'm gonna manually tighten the cable with the barrel adjuster until it shifts. Right there. Okay, then we'll continue. Again. Again. Okay, pretty good. We'll shift down. Okay, shifting was pretty good. Go back up again. Now that skipped one. So I think at this point I will have to adjust this B-screw a little bit. Let's back it out all the way so that the B-screw is all the way out. Okay, I was pretty happy with the way that shifted, so I think we're good there. So I'm going to go all the way up and down one more time just to check shifting. Okay, starting from the highest gear. So far, so good. Okay, that was good. Next, we're going to adjust our brakes. Now, before we adjust the cables, I'm going to actually check the positioning of the pads, because you can see it's not quite lined up with the rim. It's like kind of diagonal. So let's loosen this bolt here, just enough so I can move it around. And the easiest way to do this is to slowly squeeze the brake, and as you do, line the pad up with the rim until it's actually touching, and you want it to be just below the top of the rim. So I think that looks good from both top and bottom. So now I've clamped it down all the way with the brake lever, and while squeezing the lever, I'm just going to tighten this so that it stays in place when I let go. And then while holding the brake pad, I'm just going to tighten this bolt. So when I close the brake, it should end up in the right place. So I'm just going to repeat this for all 4 pads. Okay, the pads have all been adjusted, so now we're going to adjust the cable pull. I'm going to take off this padding now because it's blocking the way of the cable. So I've attached this rod from the handlebars to the stand, and that's to keep the bars from swinging around and hitting the top tube. You can see this cable's pretty slack, so what I'm going to do is loosen this brake bolt and pull the cable taut. You'll notice that with my other hand I'm holding the brakes slightly closed, and we'll just clamp down that bolt again, not too tight, just tight enough to test it out. Okay, I'm going to squeeze the brakes, and they feel a little bit long. It's kind of a long pull, so I'm going to adjust it a little bit more. I'm going to loosen that bolt again. Once this is loose, we'll just squeeze the calipers a little bit more and pull the cable tight, then close the clamp. And we just keep doing this till we get the amount of play in the lever that we want. That feels pretty good. At this point, because we're so close to where we want it to be, I'll do any subsequent adjustments using the barrel adjuster. And we'll check our spacings, that it's the calipers the same distance on both sides from the rim, which it is. And we're going to do the same thing with the front brake. Now this one actually has already been set, so both of our brakes are good. And we've already checked our derailleur cable, which is good. So at this point we can cut our excess cable. So I'll go ahead and do that on all 3 cables. So we'll cut here, 1, cut here, 2, and here, that, 3. Last thing we can do is put these cable ends to prevent the cables from fraying. So I'll get my pliers, attach the cable end, and just kind of clamp that down around it. Okay. And I'll do this derailleur cable right here as a different sized cable end. That. Do the same thing. Okay. And we'll do the last one on the other side right there. Cable end goes there. Okay. Okay, so at this point our bike is totally functional. We just pretty much have to put our bar tape on and we're done.